Alright guys, hey everybody. So, as you all know, my name is Khalid Bagar. I'm the president of the Architecture Society, and I'd like to welcome all of you to 2025 lecture series. So, the title of this year's series is Fostering Trust in Innovative Material Choices, which is an interesting topic. And today's lecture will be led by Josh Peasley from CAUKIN Studio. And
cool, thank you.
Josh comes from a remarkable studio that has worked in many different countries, on different projects in different countries. And he has a lot of knowledge, on all of this stuff, material choices and stuff like that. And so it's a great opportunity for everyone here to gain some knowledge. And thank you again, Josh, for coming here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Right.
I've got the pleasure of being the first of your lecture series for this year, so hopefully it's a good one to kick off with. I'll try and make it as interesting as possible. Yeah, I also recognise some faces from the last couple of years, so I'm afraid I might be repeating some of the stuff I've said before, so you'll have to bear with. But yeah, I'm here today to tell you about CAUKIN Studio, which is a practice which me and my mate started 10 years ago now. Actually, this year's our 10th anniversary, when we were, I guess, in your shoes at uni studying at Cardiff. So I'll talk to you a little bit about where we started and kind of the journey we've been on, some of our working methodologies, and try and put a bit of a focus around materials and material usage through our projects as well. And then I'll finish off by talking a little bit about some of the things we're now working on and working towards. Oh, I've got a point at the, okay, cool. Yeah, so we're CAUKIN Studio. We aim to create an impact through architecture, and our sort of mission statement, if you like, is that every human being should have the opportunity and tools to shape the spaces that they inhabit. We should all benefit from the quality of life that's achieved through informed design, and construction has to reduce its environmental impact on our planet. So they're the kind of three things that we try to guide most of, or all of our work by. And for us, we see impact as kind of twofold thing. When people talk about impact in architecture or impactful architecture projects, often people are speaking about the kind of end product and how the building, school, hospital, whatever it might be, will educate so many kids, or there'll be this many births in the new hospital, etc. But for us, we think that the process is just as important, and actually potentially a bigger opportunity to create a longer-term impact as the building itself. So it's about using design and construction as an educational tool, basically, to teach people about not just practicalities of construction, but also about design thinking, about thinking about local materials and how they can be used in different ways or innovative ways to create better, longer-lasting structures, which are hopefully kind of more comfortable to inhabit. So the kind of three key things that we try to do to achieve this is designing through collaboration. So whether that's working on a school workshop with some kids here in the UK, or out with a community in Fiji, designing a community hall, it's all about making sure that design process is as inclusive as possible, and getting everyone involved from as early a stage as possible. So obviously you can see here that means getting hands-on and making and conducting design workshops in schools, or if it's collaborating remotely with communities in Fiji, then it's about kind of constantly iterating the design, holding stakeholder meetings throughout that process to make sure that there's as much input and say from the community as well. The next one's learn through building. I think this one is kind of does what it says on the tin. It's getting stuck in on site, working with skilled tradespeople, but also unskilled people and youth on site to learn through construction and hopefully increase future employment opportunities. And then finally, the last one, experience through immersion. So often we're living with or alongside the communities we're building with, and that kind of immersive nature of or way of approaching the project helps us to gain a much better and quicker, deeper understanding of how the people we're working with use their spaces, interact with their homes, community halls, whatever it might be, but also gives us a really good opportunity to learn about their culture and their way of life. And I think is a much better way to learn about, in this case, Fijian village culture than going to any hotel and kind of watching a tourism performance or whatever it might be. Is it frozen again? There we go. Twice. There we go. So, yeah, the beginning. As I said, it was about 10 years ago that we were sat in your guys' seats. Just finished our second year of architecture. Had obviously a couple of months or 3 months, however long it is, of summer ahead of us. And a lot of our friends and uni colleagues were doing internships at offices and stuff like that. And we kind of thought, well, we see that's beneficial, of course, and I think I encourage everyone to do that if they have the opportunity, but we thought we wanted to get a bit more hands-on and try something ourselves, try and design our own project and I guess build our own project as well. And so we started off by reaching out to loads of NGOs and charities all over the world, basically saying, look, we're a bunch of architecture students, we don't really know how to build stuff, we're a bit practical, we're not builders by any means. And we're also starting out on our design journey, so we appreciate that this is we're asking you a bit of a favour, because although we're saying we're going to design and build you something and we're going to try and fundraise for it too, we're also asking you to give us a chance, because we don't really know what we're doing either. And so a charity called Friends of Koh Rong got back to us. They had just recently set up on the island of Koh Rong, which is just off the coast of Cambodia. I think now, 10 years on, is probably quite a popular tourist destination, but at the time it didn't have much tourism there, and so I think it was 2 Americans that had spent some time there, and they set up this NGO on the island to basically start up a more formal school and give the kids a safe place to learn and also play. As tourism was starting to come to the island, that meant there was kind of some of the negative impacts of tourism coming alongside that. And so they wanted the kids to have somewhere safe to go to on the weekends and after school as well. And so they said, we've got a classroom, but we don't have a playground, or we've got a seesaw, but we don't really have much else than that. So we'd love it if you could build us something that helps the kids to play creatively, but also maybe even gives us a little bit more teaching space. So we set out to run a Kickstarter campaign, which was to raise the funds for the construction materials, and then went out and built it over the course of, I think it was about 6 weeks. Part of that campaign, the Kickstarter campaign, just so happened that along the same time, a music artist called Caribou had this like sculptural fish thing. It's basically like a sort of paper mache, but it's a bit more robust than that, with a big balloon inside it. And it's in one of his music videos, and there's like a kid running along with this massive fish behind him. And he put out on Facebook at the time a competition to say, basically, if you can give me a good reason as to why I should have this fish, then I'll give it to you. And so we just opened our Kickstarter campaign and kind of putting plans in place for this project, and said, well, we're doing this thing in Cambodia, it'd be really cool if we could make the fish like a centerpiece of it. And he liked the idea so much that we won the competition and therefore won the fish. But also that meant that him and his record company gave us some money towards the build as well, which was really great and gave us a really good kind of kickstart. But I think for us, I mean, we obviously went into this knowing we were inexperienced in construction and didn't really know that much about design. But I think that what it really showed us was that when we were working with local people on the island and also on the mainland, learning about how we get materials, what materials are available, what materials are used and how they're used differently to what we might use them for here. Different species of timber, different ways to treat bamboo, and all materials we'd never really interacted with here, or hadn't interacted with much here in the UK. And we realized through this process how much we had to learn from working in collaboration with local people, and especially also with local materials. And it was really eye-opening for us as students and young designers to kind of, really see how much we gained from this experience. And we thought we need to keep doing more of this, and we need to keep collaborating in, I guess, places that are alien to us in many ways, to learn from local people, because there's so much value in that. But we did feel also that there was this kind of exchange of knowledge as well, where some of the skills that we had picked up at architecture school meant that we came up with ideas for ways of using materials or design ideas and motifs which some of the local people we were working with wouldn't have never thought of. So it was a really nice sort of knowledge exchange, which was really beneficial to everyone involved. And so that's where we said, right, we're on something here, we need to keep doing more of this. So this fast forwards another 2 years. So the year after that, we actually did 2 more playgrounds and kind of tested the theory out again. But also started to kind of evolve our business model, I guess. We obviously funded this first project through a Kickstarter campaign, and we couldn't really ask all of our parents and friends and aunts and uncles and friends of friends for more funding for future projects. So we had to come up with some sort of business model that could pay for the materials and kind of sustain us doing this. And so we started to run these kind of construction workshops, and that also meant that we could step up the builds in sort of complexity. And this was in 2017. And these were our first, so we did Korong, then two more playgrounds in Indonesia the next year. And then this year was the first time we were kind of stepping it up to full-scale buildings. Now, we didn't necessarily go into this year thinking, let's build 2 actually what were quite large buildings at the time. We said, let's just try and build something a bit bigger or more ambitious than a playground. And so, again, we went through the process of reaching out to NGOs and kind of organizations all over the world. And I found a charity in Fiji that were doing some kind of post-cyclone reconstruction work. And they got back to us and they said, you couldn't have emailed at a better time. We've got 2 buildings we need to do, and we got some funding for both of them. And so we said, well, okay, we're probably a bit out of our depth here, but we'll give it a go. And we spent the best part of a year, like 3 or 4 hours every weekend, maybe more, kind of going back and forth with the charity, the local communities. Spent a lot of time on Skype before the days of Zoom and Teams, talking to the charity and kind of organizing these builds. The step up in complexity also meant that we needed to get engineers involved. Obviously Fiji, or maybe not obviously, but Fiji is subject to tropical cyclones. So these buildings were going to be hit by some of the worst forces of wind and nature imaginable. So we had to get the help of others. And I think throughout this whole process, even now, a massive part of what we do is working collaboratively, not just with the communities and organizations we're working with overseas, but also with our network here in the UK, environmental design specialists, structural engineers, obviously importantly, acoustic engineers, etc., to kind of add as much value as we can to the design of the buildings. So this year, obviously, aside from stepping up the complexity of the buildings themselves, also kind of formalized our sort of operating structure and the key stakeholders or the key ingredients and people that we realize we need for these projects to be sustainable and to be as beneficial for everyone involved as possible. And so, and this still stands true for pretty much all of our projects today as well. So the first of which is obviously the end users of the building, the community we're working with. In this photo here, that's Evergreen School in Zambia. So in this case, it's the school staff and kids. It might be a village community in Fiji. It might be a team of doctors, nurses, and even patients in Uganda. There's, the end users are vast and wide and obviously change varying on where the project is and what the brief is. But as I've been saying, it's all about making sure that they're involved in the design process and then also the construction process on site as much as possible and right from the very start. We've then got our delivery partner or client in quotation marks, often NGOs or government bodies that we're working with. They're either based here in the UK and have a long-standing kind of record of working in whatever location it is, or they are based locally and run locally. And they're our real key contact on the ground, people that have knowledge and trust of the end users, but knowledge of the context, climate, logistics, all that sort of stuff. So they're really our key kind of logistics partner, I suppose. We've then got education/training recipients. So again, this covers quite a wide range of people. This could be a local youth person getting involved on site and taking part in the construction. It could be architect students or engineering students like you guys from all around the world taking part in our construction workshops. Or in this photo here, in this case, we've run some kind of design and construction workshops with schools all across the UK. And so in this case, it was the college students that took part in that. We've then got design professionals and specialists. As I say, working with structural engineers, MEP engineers, landscape designers sometimes, environmental design specialists is really key, and we use their services and their skills to plug the gaps that we don't have. One example of this is the maternity centre that we built in 2021, I think it was, in Uganda. A really large project. At that point, it was the biggest project we'd ever taken on to date, and we had never obviously designed a hospital before, and designing hospitals is quite a complex thing. So we worked with HOK, quite a large architecture firm, who are medical and design specialists and professionals, and they kind of helped consult for the medical layout and all of the equipment and all of that sort of stuff, and kind of plug that gap in our knowledge. And then finally there's us, design and build fabricators. I suppose we're the link between all of these, and now obviously kind of the architectural designers and contractors that work on the projects wherever they might be. So I suppose what I've been speaking about so far has mostly been encapsulated by the kind of international development side of the projects that we do. Again, mainly like public realm stuff, so maternity centres. We've done a coconut oil processing facility owned by a local community. Schools, kindergartens, community halls, all sorts of stuff like that. But we've also now started to kind of branch out into other types of work, and it's been about trying to then thread some of the skills and value that we can bring to the international development projects into then these other different project typologies. So as I mentioned before, we've started doing kind of more education and workshop-based things in schools across the UK, aimed at trying to hopefully diversify the architecture profession a little bit. So working with schools with various backgrounds, but targeting schools that have, and this is a key metric that we've been using, but is percentage of population that get the school meal support from the government as a way to try and create more diversity in the profession. And so, running this one was actually just a model making workshop in a school in South Wales, but we've done full-scale design projects as well. We've built like a little STEM pavilion thing, a little bench, all sorts of stuff, which has been really fun. We've also started to move more into sort of architecture and public installations. That's with a bit of a lens on sustainability, I guess. Especially today with brand deals and things that you see popping up, people putting on massive structures, building things or designing and building things which are up or about and open for like a weekend or even a day, and then they're just thrown away and don't necessarily always consider the afterlife. So we've been doing a lot of architecture / art and public installations which try to consider that and try to give a second use to everything that goes into the project. So we've done a few collaborations now with a company called Skip Gallery. They're all about creating art in skips, and about then repurposing the materials that went into that. So some of them, in fact, this photo here was the Feelings Library. I think this was the first one we actually did with Skip Gallery. This was in Shoreditch in London. And then all of these materials then went to a school in Peckham, which we then used to do a design and construction workshop. And then finally, the kind of most recent, I guess, kind of project typology is social entrepreneurship and commercial impact. So basically becoming developers of our own projects, but still maintaining development for impact. So looking at ways we can create commercial opportunities that also benefit people locally. in a sustainable way as well. So I can talk a bit more about that later on. But in terms of how we kind of select our projects, as it says here, regardless of the typology, we try to make sure that all the projects meet these core requirements, so that first of which is they are requested and approved by the community. They've come from the community as a request rather than us going to them to say, we think you need this. That's obviously the wrong approach. It's always about waiting or seeking out communities that are looking for assistance on whatever building or structure it might be. Then obviously the community and end users will be fully involved during the whole process, as I said, throughout design and construction. That we're also best positioned to offer a solution that can add value and impact. Sometimes either doing a project through us might not be the best way forwards, or even a project at all might not be the best solution. Maybe it's not a building. There's that classic story which is always told in architecture school, and I don't know if they've told you guys this one yet, but there's the whole school that went to the architecture firm to say, we've got this massive problem, we have no circulation space, the corridors are rammed between lessons, and instead of designing a new block to create more space, they actually just said, well, you need to change the bell system, and the bells all rang on different schedules, and that meant that there was no congestion in the hallways. But obviously a good example of a solution where building wasn't actually the right solution. So yeah, that we're best positioned to offer that. And then also that we can identify throughout the process of a project skill exchange opportunities, both for our international team, participants that are taking part in it, but also for the local communities that we're working with, and as many people that are involved as possible, basically. So I'll kind of talk generally and probably apply this more to some of the more international development type projects that we've done, and some of the design considerations that we have to give to these projects, and also talk about materials as well. So generally, a lot of the projects that we've worked on have taken place in quite a short period of time, and generally always to a pretty tight budget or a very shoestring budget. And so balancing these design considerations out in the best way possible is always what we feel is the key to good design and positive outcomes. And so that might mean that in one project, the time factor is the thing that has to drive what the design is, but in another project, it might be that climate is the absolute design driver. That doesn't necessarily mean that we just disregard all these other things and just put climate first, but it's about trying to prioritize this one whilst satisfying all of these ones too. And I suppose as an overarching concept, that's what being an architect is about anyway. And obviously every project, no matter if it's a really expensive private residential or a kind of community-based school build in the UK or whatever it is, these all have these kind of same design considerations, and it's all about balancing them in the right way possible. So the first of which is budget. I think this one's a pretty obvious one. If you don't have enough money to do the thing, then you won't be able to do it. So for us, that's meant on a lot of our projects, it's really being very cutthroat about how much space we need, about counting every last screw and nail and making sure that we're using material really efficiently, building things sometimes to standard sizes. If we know that, ply dims are set sizes, or we know that we can get certain dimensions of timber locally, it's making sure we're designing for as little wastage as possible and therefore not wasting any money. Climate, we've worked across 14 different countries now all over the world, and obviously each one with its own climate, and many of them with very challenging climates, and especially in the world that we live in now and today, much more extreme weather events. So obviously I mentioned cyclones in Fiji, but other things like flooding occurring in many more places as well, sea level rise, lots of kind of issues like this. An interesting one, I can't remember if I'll see if I've got any slides on it later, but an interesting one in Vanuatu where humidity was a really difficult issue that the building faced, and so we had to try and overcome that. So yeah, lots of different climates that we're designing for, and again, that's where it's really important we're working with the right kind of consultants and structural engineers, etc., to produce the best outcomes. Materials, this one, obviously relates most to your lecture series title. For us, it is always about using entirely locally sourced materials. So if we can't get it locally, and by that we mean within at least 100 kilometers of the site, but the majority of our materials, I think up to about 90% of the materials have come within a 50-kilometer radius of the site. Then if we can't get it, then we can't use it. So there's no use, for example, so this is a project in Vanuatu. In fact, this example specifically, the engineers wanted us to import these steel footings that the timber frames would kind of sit onto on top of the concrete. And the only place we could get them was New Zealand, which is not far from Vanuatu, sure, but that would have meant buying them there, importing them. They're then not locally available to local people once we've left. It also meant they were going to be really expensive. So as I say, it's a really priority that we use these local materials, and that therefore once we've gone and the building's complete, anyone locally can not only repair and maintain the building with the same materials, but also the hope is that the people that have been a part of that project see some of those design details or see some of those kind of more innovative use of the same materials and then carry them forwards into their own kind of house extensions or builds or whatever it might be. This is obviously especially important in places like Vanuatu, again, where cyclones are a big issue. And some of the places that buildings fail the most is in their connections under really strong wind loading. And so, yeah, again, it was about trying to show how we can use the threaded rod, which is not used that often locally, instead of nails to create stronger junctions. Also thinking about wind forces and connections to foundations and trying to impart some of that knowledge through locally obtained material. Skill level, so on pretty much all of the builds that we're working on, we're not working with a team of like 30-year experienced contractors. Most people, I mean, majority of people that have worked on our building sites have either worked on like one build before, or they've been helping their mum or dad out on, you know, swinging a hammer at home to build a stud wall every now and then, or just generally are quite unskilled. And so we have to try and design buildings in a way that can be repetitive, and so that once we've kind of built one frame, we can then build 10 frames, and it's a really easy learning, a very quick kind of learning curve, and you're using a lot of the same techniques on site, but it also means you can do it really quickly, which then kind of lends itself to time as well. So partly because of the cost factor, obviously it gets expensive if we're spending, you know, 3-4 months plus on a site, and so we try to keep the builds as succinct and quick as possible, to basically mean that we don't have to put as much cost into them from our side, and therefore means we can put more of the budget towards materials. So pretty much all of our builds that have involved kind of a participant labour force as well have been done within about 2 months. I think the longest was 3, but between 6 to 8 weeks is a typical construction time. And for some of the scale of the buildings that we've done, that is a very quick turnaround. So that's where especially that kind of designing repetitively really comes into play as well. And that means we can build quickly. But also, as you can kind of see in this very thin photo here, prefabricating elements is also a good way to kind of achieve this design consideration. So if we've got people prefabricating frames and parts of the structure over there on site, while we've got people digging foundations over here, then we've kind of got a lot happening all at once, and then it kind of all comes together in the middle of the project, and it is a really quick turnaround. The penultimate one is information, or in this case, lack of information. Again, because a lot of our sites are very rural, and increasingly so. I mean, this one here in Vanuatu, to get there from here would have taken about 34 hours, and a good 12 hours of that is the last bit of the journey as well. So getting a surveyor, or even just like high pixel quality Google Earth in some of these locations, is really difficult. So we're often designing with a very basic understanding of the sites, or it's kind of photos taken locally, but conveying what detailed photos you need of a site to someone that doesn't understand the design and construction process at all can be really difficult as well. So we're often got like 4 photos of a site and some pixelated Google Earth data. So we have to design fairly flexibly because of that, making sure that the kind of methodology and foundation technique or various different things can be adapted quite quickly, and that also if we get to site and there is something drastically different from what we were expecting, we can adapt the design very quickly and it doesn't necessarily affect the structural quality of the building. So that's always quite a difficult one, and we've come up against sites in the past where we've arrived and said, right, well, we're going to have to build the whole building but the other way around, or mirror it, or shift the whole thing down the road a little bit. And thankfully to date, it's never been to the detriment of the project, but this is some of the things we're dealing with. And then finally, logistics. Again, this kind of relates to remote projects more so than others, but in some of the places we're working, we really have to think about how the hell we get materials to the site, and therefore how that then links to the budget. If it costs a lot of money to get materials to the site, then that takes a chunk away from what we can actually design and build in the first place. This example here was the coconut oil processing facility I mentioned earlier. It was basically on quite a remote island in Fiji, and the only way to get onto that island was on these smaller, this one's actually an iron boat, but most of them were like fiberglass rigs. And so pretty much all the materials came from the mainland on this ferry here, and shipped just offshore, and then had to be chucked off overboard onto these small boats to then get through the gap in the reef and then onto the beach to the site. And so that, obviously, all of the fuel for the boat and even just the delivery cost of the ferry getting there took out a massive part of the budget. So, as I say, it can be a real challenge to balance some of these design considerations, but I think it also causes kind of innovative ideas and fun designs to come out of it as well. So just a couple of projects to kind of highlight. How long have we been talking for? About half an hour. So I'll go through these fairly quickly. These are some of our more recently completed projects. This project here, this is the Circumdeso guest house in Indonesia. This was completed last September, and then this one is the Mashola on the same site, which was completed 2 years before that, or 3 years before that, I think. So this one was a charity who conducts kind of social outreach within the local community. They do a lot of women entrepreneurship sessions and promoting local business, as well as kind of religious gatherings. And the first project we built was a sort of prayer and teaching space. And then the construction of this, the charity we worked with actually, based locally, owned and run locally, but they said, we want this building because we need this space, but we also want it to be really Instagrammable so that people come and then more people get engaged with our mission, and that hopefully gets us a bigger outreach. I'm not saying it's necessarily an Instagrammable building, but as a result, or as part result of this building, they've had way more people coming, people wanting to come for longer durations and engage with their projects over, rather than just a day or a weekend, over like a week or a couple of weeks. And so they said, well, now we need somewhere to host them and an accommodation for them to stay in. So that's when we went back last year to build the Circumdeso guest house. We're actually returning there again this year to build upon the work we've done with them and on the structures we've already built, to build something called a gubuk sawah. I don't know if I said that exactly right, but it's basically a sort of outdoor pavilion, chill space used culturally and locally in Indonesia, as well as some sort of like play features. And we're also going to build some more of this furniture for inside the guest house. So continuing our work with Circumdeso. again, we've started to work more on kind of, I said this a bit earlier, but projects that are a bit more commercially based, but again, owned and run locally by in this case, a local village in Fiji. So Muanivatu Trails is a village, the Vandomo village owned company. And they basically have this really beautiful waterfall, which is just out of the shot here, which tourists from the surrounding hotels often visit. And I think for like 30 years or something, people have been coming to visit this waterfall. And over that time, and they charge to visit the waterfall, but over that time, they've used some of that funds to kind of build a nice path. This, although very run down now, for a time was a little changing space. And then there's another like platform up here, which people kind of put their towels and stuff on before they then go in the waterfall. But they reached out to us to say, basically, our changing rooms are crap now. People can't use them anymore. They're really slippy. This building's falling down. We want something that kind of smartens the appearance of the whole site up. We want a small kiosk where the local women in the village can sell some of the handicrafts that they make. We want better changing rooms, which was this one here. And we also want somewhere we can potentially offer massages. So we kind of, got in touch with them, I think, a couple of years back now, and have been planning this project for a while, and we went and built it back in September. So now basically a more better facilities for people that are visiting. That's both local tourism and international tourism, and hopefully better opportunity for them to kind of increase their revenue through sales of handicrafts, etc. And just generally, I guess, a better guest experience, which in time hopefully reaches more people and more people want to visit, and then therefore the village generates more income, which they can then invest in their own kind of projects. This one, again, completed last year in September, was the Mesoamericano Playground in Guatemala. Again, a school that did have a playground previously, but had basically been loved to the ground and everything was falling apart and it was unsafe, so they decided to dismantle it a few years back. And they said to us, they're a really forward-thinking school and they engage in lots of different types of learning, and they said, basically, we want to try and create a playground that offers a variation of learning experiences for different ages. So there's actually 3 playgrounds that we planned. This is part of one of them, and this is the other one. And then the third one we haven't built yet, but we'll go back and build that hopefully in the next year or 2. And each one, as I say, for a different age group, but also trying to enhance different kind of modes and methods of play, different sensual experiences. So sound, music, climbing, all sorts of different types of play. And then again, this one was for slightly older kids. We kind of wound this web or net through the trees, so you can kind of like climb up the different levels of it as you go, and then you can lie down on it and kind of hang out as a little hammock thing. And then this one, the team decided to call the Barbie Playhouse. I don't think you can see it here, but it's very pink on the inside. But yeah, cool kind of tree house. And this playground specifically didn't use any concrete, and also we wanted to basically build everything off the trees, but without damaging the trees themselves. So they had you can kind of see it in this photo, but this like big X structure which formed the base and then spanned across 4 different trees, and then all of the structure was then built on top of that. But there was about 4 or 5 pavilions that kind of made up that playground, and you could kind of journey between them all. So that was completed last year. It is in here. I thought it was. This was the one that I said about had a really interesting climatic challenge. This was Ramas village in Vanuatu, the one that takes a very long time to get to. The project came about because in, I think, 2015 or 2020, no, 2020 was another cyclone, but in 2015, they had a cyclone which wiped out their old school. So they wanted a new school space, but the charity that we worked with on this one had been supplying them books for like the last few years. And because they had really high humidity in this village, just because of like really specifically where this village was on the mountain and the valleys around it, meant that it had this like really crazy humid microclimate. And like all day, all through the day and all through the night on the old blackboard before the cyclone destroyed the school, there'd be like condensation running down it, so you can barely write on it because the chalk would just like disintegrate. And then also all of the books the charity had been sending out, they were getting through them like really quickly, and they kept having to send more books out, and the kids basically didn't really have a chance to read them before they were basically sodden and unreadable. So the charity came to us and said, look, we need to build something that's future-proofed and strong and will withstand future natural disasters, but also we've got this issue with these books and we don't know how to solve it. We can't obviously stick a dehumidifier or an air conditioning unit in there because there's no power in the village. And even if we could put solar on the roof, there's no way it's going to generate enough energy to power something like an AC unit. I mean, this is actually quite an unusual photo because the sun's out and the sky's clear, but it's very often cloudy and raining here. So they wouldn't get enough sunlight anyway. So part of the strategy with this one was basically trying to create as much airflow throughout this library space specifically as we could. And that meant that where the air is moving, the moisture's moving with it. And we then coupled that also with, so you can kind of see in this photo here, these roofing irons kind of wrapped the whole way around the structure like this. And the roofing irons that went around this portion of the library, we painted black so that when there was sun, it heated the space. The black paint absorbed the heat into the tin roof and then into the space inside. That meant that it increased the temperature, which then lowers the relative humidity, which means that basically the air kind of sucks up moisture into it. And then so you then have this like really moisture-rich air, and then when you combine that with lots of natural ventilation, so openings here at the bottom and then up at the top to create stack effects, basically the air is being drawn out and all this moisture-rich air is being pulled out of the building. And then we also designed these bookshelves that had these like bamboo separators between them to try and create as much space between all the books as possible and create as much kind of airflow around them as possible too. And that was done in partnership with Cardiff University and their environmental design specialists there. And yeah, that's the kind of knowledge we didn't necessarily have ourselves and couldn't have done without their help, but that came with a really innovative solution to this issue. And yeah, we monitored the space with the help of the school teachers for just over a year afterwards, and we found it was a 20% reduction compared to one of the other buildings on site. So a bit of a success there, I guess. How am I doing for time? I'll quickly talk about this one. As I said, we've started to do more kind of workshops in schools across the UK. We actually haven't done one for a while, but we're planning to do more. And it's basically about giving kids an insight into what a career in the built environment might mean. So the way we run them is that everyone in the classroom, they all split up into teams. They're all given different roles. So you've got like project manager, quantity surveyor, contractor, designer, engineer, et cetera, and everyone kind of has to try and learn what those things are and then put that cap on when they then come to design something. And we get them all building whatever it is that they want to come up with. Often we get crazy things like swimming pools on the roof and basketball courts on the roof, which there is actually a building in London that has that, to be fair. But or in this case, this guy, he wanted what he called a slappy hand so that he could high-five it, but also fling teachers away when he was fed up with them. And so he wanted this slappy hand on the project. So then what we did was take all the ideas from the design workshops, and then kind of went away for half a term to come up with a design and incorporated some of those ideas into the playground itself. And obviously we couldn't build a mechanical slappy hand that's going to push the teachers away, but a little motif there to kind of give a nod to the slappy hand. He was really overjoyed when he saw that on the side of the building, and everyone now kind of slaps it as they climb up the ladders. This is the last one, I might as well speak about it. And then finally, this is the Evergreen School in Zambia. This was actually completed quite some time ago now. This was 2018, I think. But that's led on to more work in Zambia, and then further work in Uganda and other places too. But again, trying to lead by example and try and kind of change some of the perceptions locally, but also even here in the UK, construction is a very male-dominated industry, and although it is improving a little bit in the UK, it could be better. So for us, yeah, as I say, trying to lead by example, and we employed 50-50% split of male and female labour on site, and I think especially important in a project that is a school and classroom build, where there's obviously lots of young women who can see these very strong and in pretty much every case way more capable than the men on site, which hopefully will inspire them to take up careers also in the built environment and maybe even construction themselves too. Just quickly, what time did I start? I can't remember. We're still good? Yeah, cool. It's all well and good doing all these things and saying we're going to do all these things, but if we don't then evaluate and revisit what we've done and say, okay, well, what went wrong? What could we do better? What didn't go how we thought it might go, or how has the outcome differed from what we might have thought it would have? Then we can't improve. And so it's really important that we're revisiting all of our projects and kind of maintaining as much consistent contact with the people we've worked with as possible. And then once we've evaluated that, it's then kind of responding to that. So where we're then continuing to work in that same place, not necessarily just the same site or with the same organization, but in the same country or context. It's taking that feedback on board and then incorporating it into what we do moving forwards. This was an example of that. We built the Nweni kindergarten. This was the one that we did. This was the first kind of big scale building that we did after we did the three playgrounds in our first couple of years. So this was Nweni kindergarten, and we built a space. At the time, there was, I think, 8 kids in at the school that were in kindergarten, and they were all learning in what used to be the school's canteen, and it was like really dimly lit, and all the tiles were cracked on the floor, and it was just like a terrible place to learn. And so we went and worked with the NGO in Fiji to build a proper kindergarten classroom, which had 2 toilets behind this wall, a little veranda, and then another, like a teacher chill out veranda space on the other side behind this photo. But we built it big enough for about 30 kids because we thought, well, there's 8 now, build a classroom, hopefully it future-proofs it a little bit, there'll be 30 kids in the next few years. But then when we returned the next year to revisit Salome, the kindergarten teacher, we found that not only had there been 30 kids show up and now start attending kindergarten and coming from further afield to attend kindergarten too, they were having to turn kids away because there was more and more coming saying, yeah, we want to learn here. So we said, okay, well, I mean, yeah, sure, it's a great outcome. We're pretty happy with that, but we obviously didn't future-proof it enough or could never have seen that it would have had that much of an impact. So we basically went back and built another kindergarten. The school had actually also hired a second teacher so that they could try and take more than 30 kids and run kind of morning and afternoon sessions, but that then meant that basically they could run sessions at the same time and have two teachers in 2 classrooms, and then enabled them to upscale to about 50 kids. And I've been back to this building many times. It's now taken a different colour. They painted all of this white and then primary colours all over the rest of it. Maybe not the choice we'd have gone for if we built it, but great to see the teachers and community kind of taking ownership of the space. And I mean, it's way more vibrant. Maybe we're just being boring architects and think that natural materials look nice, but actually if you paint it crazy colours, then it's way more appealing to the kids anyway. So yeah, about responding to the feedback that we've kind of gathered from revisiting projects. I'll fly through this very quickly. These are the last like 4 slides or 5 slides, but I said that I would talk a little bit about where we're going now as a practice. I mean, we're still doing all of the projects that you've seen to date, and we've got loads more projects coming up. But one of the things we've started to look into is basically becoming the developer of our own projects. And so rather than having to work with often very tiring governmental organizations, or lots of the form filling and stuff that comes with working with bigger organizations that have more funding. We've said, well, why don't we just develop them ourselves, and then we don't have to kind of put up with any of that headache. And so this is, I guess, a bit of a spin-off from CAUKIN. We're an architectural design and contracting company, I guess you could say, social enterprise. But now we're trying to become a developer of our own things. And so, but again, still maintaining that thread of development impact. So we're basically looking at creating a series of remote work, co-living spaces in all of the amazing places that we've worked over the years, starting with Fiji as the first, and the place that we've done the kind of most work and work most consistently. And the idea behind these is that not only are they creating, a really great place to go and spend 2 months or 3 months, however long you want to, working remotely, and having all the things you need to be able to do that, to work remotely, but they're also about fostering a collaborative atmosphere and also providing support to local entrepreneurs and local businesses. So providing business support programs. Each change space will have its own kind of digital library where local people can access digital courses to then kind of do workshops in things like writing a CV and teaching them how to use, learning how to use Microsoft PowerPoint and stuff like that. Things that will increase the local employability of local people, but then, as I say, also support local existing businesses to gain access to funding, business support, whatever it might be. So it's in part somewhere that you want to go and work and stay, obviously. Who wouldn't want to work in the tropics? But also about making sure that that's not totally in isolation from local people and local communities, which often, obviously, a lot of hotels all over the world are. I guess one of this idea also obviously was born a bit out of lockdown, where everyone had to work remotely, but I think everyone's attitude towards work has slightly changed a bit, and the way people work now has changed and work remotely. And we also felt that a lot of the existing kind of hotels and spaces out there that you can stay for longer periods of time just don't have good working environments. Like, yeah, you can go and sit in a lobby or a cafe or whatever, but the Wi-Fi is usually terrible. It's usually too noisy. Some hotels don't even let you take your laptop out. So it's really about merging really good co-working space with the kind of co-living, relaxed state environment that you would hope to get when you're on holiday, I guess. So again, also looking at accommodation modules, which are not like a typical hotel room. They are aimed at more longer term stays. I guess in a way a bit like an Airbnb in terms of it's a room, it will have a desk, it will have access to I didn't put it in here. There's no photo of it in here, but access to like a shared living space and shared kitchen, so you can go and cook your own meals if you wanted to, if you are staying there for like 2 months. And then all of the social space that comes with that, pool and yoga and all that good stuff. That's the kind of next thing we're working on amongst other stuff. I think that's the end of it is. Shameless plug, follow us on Instagram if you want to. And also if anyone's interested in our workshops, our very own Alistair, who's, I don't know where he is, there he is, took part in the Warren Farm project, which I didn't actually have in my slides today, but last year. So I guess I'll point you out. If you want to ask any questions, you can ask Alistair. But yeah, if you're interested in learning more about that, there's a QR code there as well. So thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Josh. I'm going to open up the floor to questions, so if anyone has questions.
Yeah. I guess I was wondering how you found sort of designing in various in a different climate coming out of uni, because like for us, for example, a lot of based on our projects right in the UK, and like
Mhm.
the first things becomes like insulation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like very few of us actually have experience designing in more tropical climates or like climates with very extreme weather conditions.
Yeah.
I guess how did you find that coming out of uni with like that sort of mindset?
Yeah, I think that's like one of the preconceptions you have, or even the understanding I had of the space that I live in is like ingrained in me. Obviously, it's what I've grown up knowing. So it's really hard to shake that mindset. And I think, to be fair, even today, despite, I mean, we've done like over 70 projects now all over the world, I still approach things with a biased mindset. And so I think the hardest thing is shaking that. But I think the way we find is, aside from being able to spend a lot of time in the locations ourselves, which is obviously, you know, that costs money and time and all that sort of stuff. It's basically just spending as much time as you can, researching, looking at photos on Google of like photo of buildings in that place, talking to local people, asking boring questions like, I mean, it seems obvious, but like when I say a window, what do you think about? Like, describe a window to me, and asking questions like that, and yeah, basically talking to local people and trying to understand as much as you can. I mean, that just it can never replace being able to go there and spend time there, and also spend extended amounts of time there. But yeah, I think it's just doing as much of your homework as you can beforehand. But yeah, admittedly, it's a hard thing to shake that preconception.
I'm assuming you had lots of like problems with like language barriers with like all the different places you worked at. How did you combat that?
We have at times. I think probably more when it comes to like technical language. In most of the places we've worked, we've either been lucky enough that the level of English locally is okay to get by anyway, or we've had someone on the project who spoke both languages very well, and they've basically been our go-to. I mean, actually in Guatemala, the playgrounds we did this year, there was very little English spoken there, and especially within that school as well. Like, basically, there was only one staff member that spoke English. But we luckily had a team member on our team who speaks fluent Spanish and is from Colombia. So, although obviously Guatemala and Colombia are different countries, of course, he knew some of the colloquial kind of language as well. So that helped in the translation. But I think when it comes to technical language and technical translations, even if the people we're working with, like, I mean, this is a photo in Fiji, and English is the second language in Fiji. It's taught in schools locally, so everyone speaks pretty good English, but people don't necessarily speak good construction. And so I think the best way to get around that has basically been drawing and prototyping, either by grabbing two offcuts of timber and being like, this is how we're going to do it. Or yeah, mainly like sketching 3D stuff. SketchUp models are always a very instant way for people to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. So yeah, that's probably the best way we've managed to get around it.
Do you ever meet with architects there locally? Like, do you ever find architects?
I mean, I think it's obviously important to work with local architects. They're the people that do speak that construction language, and especially in the local context. And again, also with kind of understanding of local materials is key to work with local architects. I mean, I think one of the problems we've found, although not in every place that we've worked, but architecture as a profession isn't necessarily as well understood, and there aren't necessarily like architects. Often it's more engineers or architectural engineers that their education has been much more kind of catered towards the engineering side of architecture. And so we've worked with architectural engineers quite a lot, but we're also now kind of starting to work more with universities in the places we're working that do have architectural courses. So we're doing a project in the Philippines this year with a Filipino university architecture school. Basically trying to work with local architects as well.
Would you say maybe the experience or the ability to foster an independent project while you're still in school, how doable, would you say that was like a miracle type thing, like a one-time thing, or would you say that it's still doable right now? And what advice would you give for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say it was a miracle that we worked very, very hard at. But that being said, I think, you know, there were a lot of things fell into place for that first ever project to come off. And so there was definitely luck involved. But we did put in a lot of work and put in a lot of effort and willingness to make it happen. I think basically it's about, for us, we found success in getting people behind us and like getting people to believe in what we were trying to do. I guess being ambitious also generally helps to bring people in. They think, oh, that's ambitious, I want to watch that, or I want to kind of get behind that. I definitely don't think it's possible. I do think that being younger when we were at university, we didn't really understand the risks of design and construction, and being naive was a benefit to us at that time. I don't think if I had then spent the last 10 years working in architecture that I would do it the same way now. No way. We took risks we didn't know we were taking. We didn't know what the risk was. We did it. So I think there was a benefit to that, but obviously I have to say there's caution to it as well. You can't be gung-ho about everything. But yeah, I think being ambitious helps to get people behind you. And then I suppose the other thing that enabled us to do it when we were at university was that we were like students, so we didn't have necessarily rent to pay or like mortgages to pay, and I don't have kids myself, but kids to pay for and all that sort of stuff. So there wasn't as much risk involved for us personally, financially, I suppose, in doing this and starting our own thing. So it's a good time for many reasons. There was one over here, and I'll come back to you.
So, I don't know how to word this. Like you mentioned, you guys were students when you started this. How do I say this? Like, if I remember correctly, it's not exactly legal to start your own practice without a specific like number of years and work and like reaching RIBA 3 or whatever. How did this all start? If you guys, I don't really know how to word it. I hope you understand.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
How did that work?
Well, I guess in part the reason we started reaching out to overseas NGOs and charities was that we realised it was going to be a lot harder to get a project in the UK off the ground. Not only that it would be more expensive, but there's obviously things like planning permission that we didn't understand at all, building control and all those sorts of stuff that we had no experience of. It's not that you can't do architectural projects or like submit something to planning if you're not an architect. I can't go to a client and say, I'm an architect, you can employ me, because I don't have part 3, so I can't call myself an architect, and if I was to try and sell my services as an architect, then I would be breaking the law. But there's nothing that actually protects the function or role of architecture here. So you don't have to be a part 3 architect to deliver a building, which is maybe a bit of a misunderstanding that people have. And obviously part 3 is there for a reason, and it's a good thing to do. I think you should do it if you all have ambitions of doing it. I think for us also, because again, a lot of our work is maintained as overseas. I mean, probably nowadays it's maybe like 60 or 70% of our work is still overseas stuff, and then 30 or 40% is here. And so a lot of the kind of stuff that's part 3 is not that relevant or not as relevant to our stuff overseas. It's based a lot around UK regs and kind of UK methods of practice. So it's not necessary, or hasn't been necessary for us, but I encourage you to do it. And I don't know if there's any tutors in the room, but I'm sure they'd be saying you should do it too. Oh, cool. Yeah. But actually, that being said, to be fair, we're doing a lot more work in the UK that's like more standard architecture, if you like, and I'm definitely considering whether I should do my part 3 as well. I think it's something I will do, but notoriously it's harder to do it if you're doing it like with your own projects and your own practice than under the structure of like a company that you're working for, but not impossible.
I was really to Alistair. I know he really enjoyed the construction project. Would you like to talk a bit about what actually is it? What do you, like, as a student, what would you be doing? Or?
Yeah. Well, the one Alistair took part in was actually one in the UK that we run every year, and we're going back there this year. That's a bit more of an experimental brief compared to the stuff that's overseas. Typically, the projects overseas are have quite a functional brief, like a kindergarten or a playground or whatever it might be. The one in the UK is a bit more, we turn up and there is a brief to it, but all the design is done on site, and then we find the materials we can find on the farm, and then we go and build it. And so basically, yeah, it's about getting hands-on with construction. The Warren Farm one specifically is about thinking through design, looking at the materials we have available to us, trying to come up with like innovative and artistic structures that we build experimentally on the farm down there. I guess some of our more international things, again, still it's about that getting hands-on with the tools and getting stuck in on the building site. I think obviously as we did when we first started doing this, we believe that learning about construction and doing construction is really important as designers and architects. And there's so many architects or contractors here in the UK that open plans and they're like, who's drawn this and how the hell am I going to build it? And I think we believe that if you have even a basic understanding of like how to build simple foundations and structures, that it will make you better designers. So that's basically what our like programs are aimed at, is getting hands-on with the tools. And yeah, whilst there's no insulation in this building and there's the detailing that you might come up against here in the UK is very different to a project out in Fiji, there's so much of this and the construction methodology that still applies here. And so, yeah, we think it's a really valuable thing to do. But I'm obviously biased. Yes, they are. I won't lie though, like there's like maybe 5 places across all the projects. But also we've this year open applications for next year. Although we haven't said where they'll be or what they'll be yet. You can sign up for a project for next year, and then that means that when we do release them, you get like priority choice basically of which one you want to do. Cool.
I guess that's it.
Thank you. Nice one. Thanks.